the LaxFactor podcast.
What is up, college lacrosse fans? You're watching episode 291 of the LaxFactor podcast, and we are going to dive right into number 1 Notre Dame against number 11 Georgetown. Chris Kavanaugh got the scoring started for Notre Dame, sticking the game's first goal on a dodge from the corner down into the heart of the defense, falling as he got the shot off. Notre Dame would go on to take a 6-0 lead thanks to Jalen Seymour scoring his third goal of the season on a dish from Brady Pokorny. Because Georgetown made a poor decision to partner with Flo, I have no highlights to show you of them turning the game around and scoring 6 unanswered goals to knock things up at 6s after Notre Dame took the lead 6-0. If I did have their highlights, you'd be watching Aiden Carroll score unassisted right now. But because I don't, you're instead going to get to see Devin McLean's goal on a feed from Chris Kavanaugh. That gave the Irish a 7-6 lead they would never relinquish en route to an 11-9 victory. Let's move on to number 2 Maryland at number 5 Princeton. Princeton would jump out to a 3-1 lead after Coulter Mackesy found Sean Cameron with hands free in the area of the 5-5 on the left side of the cage. After Maryland answered, it was Coulter Mackesy scoring on a Princeton man-up opportunity on a dish from Nate Kabiri about halfway through the first quarter. That gave the Tigers a 4-2 lead, and things were looking pretty sick in New Jersey. Shout out to Lax guy Scotty. That fun was short-lived, though. Maryland would go on a 6-goal run to close out the half. Said run started by Matthew Keegan, who faded off the left wing as Zach Whittier dodged away from him. Whittier threw a very nice pass across his body to Keegan, who buried it low to high. 4-3 Princeton at this point. The run would continue on through just before the end of the half when Whittier caught his man sleeping at X, cut up the left side as he crossed GLE. Bryce Ford hit him, and he deposited the ball into the back of the net. 8-4 Terps with 51 seconds left in the half. Princeton would be unable to claw back into it as Maryland went on to win 13-9. Now we're at Homewood Field. Number 3, Johns Hopkins hosting North Carolina. For Hopkins, Carolina, we're going to jump to the end of this one. After Hopkins tied the score up at 8s early in the third, Dominic Petro continued his big day by scoring back-to-back goals, giving UNC a 10-8 lead. The first, a near-side stick laser that he shot off a screen on the left wing. Stout didn't really see it until it already squeaked past his stick and between the pipe. The second proved to be an absolute sicko. He got a step on his man, dodged up the left side of the field, and as he hit that 5-5, he unleashed a low-to-high rip into the top left corner, a shot that Stout didn't have a chance in hell of saving. That made it 10-8 Carolina at this point. Hopkins would answer once again, however, scoring 3 unanswered goals on their way to taking their first lead of the game, thanks to a deep rip out of Matt Collison on a dish from Russell Melendez, a really nice feed from X to out top to Collison from Melendez. Carolina would show some stones and would score the game's next 3 goals, with the eventual game winner being scored by Caden Harshberger with 9:45 remaining in the fourth. Ryan Levy found Harshberger off the left side of the crease. Almost looked like it was a forced feed, but he collects it, shows his hands, buried the rock. Hopkins would end up having a couple of opportunities late, but a rush shot by Melendez was eaten up by Gianfrancaro, and Carolina was able to kill the clock from there and hold on for the 13-12 win. Number 4, Cornell hosting number 12, Denver, kicking off this weekend's top 20 action up there in Ithaca. After a slow first 5 minutes, Hugh Kelleher got the scoring started for the Big Red. CJ Kurse picked up his first assist of the season. Just a quick drop to Kelleher, who had time and room, stepped himself down into an easy goal, 1-0 Cornell. Later in the game, Kurse would make it 9-1 Cornell after dodging and then redodging his man off the left wing. He was heading back towards GLE, rolled back, got his hands free enough to rip shit up, and then he did so. To add injury to insult, after Denver appeared to flummox Cornell's offense on what could have been their last possession of the half, a loose ball ended up finding its way to CJ Kurse's stick. He found Goldstein on the doorstep, and Cornell was now up 10-1, and that's it. Nothing went well for Denver after this. They end up losing 15-5. Cornell picks up their second win of the season, and right now they're looking like one of the best teams in the country. I'm going to do something I've never done before while highlighting Syracuse. I'm not going to show you a single Syracuse goal because Harvard deserves all of the shine, and we're going to give it to them in this one. Let's jump to late in the third. Syracuse held a 12-11 lead after leading the entire game. 40 seconds of very good man-to-man defense out of the Orange. They switch into a zone off an end-line restart and very quickly allowed John Arant to toe drag Jake Spallina into an easy goal that knotted things up at 12s. After Teddy Malone scored to give Harvard their first lead of the game, Miles Botkiss would get free on the crease, and Jack Speedle found him for an easy doorstep finish with 11:39 left in the fourth. 14-12 Harvard at this point. Sam English would get one back for the Orange, but Sam King would score the eventual game winner on a man-up goal. Botkiss hit King, who had time to step down with his hands free. He rips one past Michael Ippoliti, who was playing for the benched Jimmy McCool. We're not even going to go through that painful final 2 minutes of the game where Syracuse gets a unreleasable man-up play. They win that first face-off. They score a goal. They win the next face-off. They can't actually get a shot on Cage after that to score the game-tying goal. Harvard ends up winning. Their defense played incredible, and Syracuse is now in, oh shit, we may not be back mode after losing to Harvard for the first time in program history, doing so at home nonetheless. And we're going to talk about how ugly this one was here in a little bit. Number 7, Duke and Michigan did battle for 4 quarters, but needed overtime to decide the outcome of this game. It was Andrew McAdory answering the bell late in overtime, dodging up the right side from X, turning his hips, and burying the game winner just as he got above GLE, helping Duke to improve to 4-0 on the season. Now listen, we're going to dive into the rest of the show here. Before I do that, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening and getting this far. Please share the show, like, subscribe, do all that crap. You can also go to LaxFactor.com and you can get yourself some swag, t-shirts, hats, all that crap. You really got to support the channel because these highlights get these videos tagged and I make almost $0 off of these. So I'm going to shut up now. And we're going to dive into the overtime portion of the show, and we're going to kind of go deeper into this, and we're going to talk about all of the games. Okay, so Notre Dame and Georgetown. Overall, game of runs. Notre Dame started the game with 6 unanswered goals. Georgetown returned the favor, scored 6 of their own to tie the score. Notre Dame then rattled off 4 goals before giving 3 goals back to the Hoyas, which led to that 1-goal game with just 4:08 left in the contest, at which point Chris Kavanaugh sealed the deal with 1:54 left, giving Notre Dame some breathing room by the end. Will Lynch, he had an absolute monster game here. Let's switch over so you can kind of stare at his stats as we're talking about it. I said Ross Prince was going to be the key for the Hoyas to be able to kind of stay in this game and maybe win. I actually figured that if Ross Prince didn't have a great game, that this was going to be a game lost by a wider margin for Georgetown, and that wasn't the case. Will Lynch goes 15-22, 8 GBs, had an incredible game, and Georgetown was still able to keep pace and play well here. And that's also despite a good game out of Ricky Ardelli, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit here. So just even bigger, though, for Lynch. Over the course of the fourth quarter, he won 6 of 7 as Georgetown was starting to claw back. Had he not won nearly every draw of that fourth quarter, the Hoyas' run probably spans more than 3 consecutive goals, and this outcome is likely much different. But it wasn't, because Lynch played great. Another huge key in this one for Notre Dame was, like I said, Ricky Ardelli, 16 saves. Now, in my preview of the Irish earlier in the year, I was saying that if Notre Dame's going to have a chance at the three-peat, Ricky Ardelli, he needs to play championship-level lacrosse. Or I didn't even say that, I don't think. I think I generally just said he needs to be playing better than average. You know, if he could hang in that area of 53 to 55% or more, then Notre Dame was going to be in very good shape with the defense they have in front of him. And so far, he's been incredible. Had his best game of the season against the best team they've played thus far, 64% between the pipes against Georgetown, and he now sits at 60% after 3 games so far this season. Last point on this one. I said last week, I said this last week, but in the end, Chris Kavanaugh, we still, continue to question, can Chris Kavanaugh lead this team? Can he be the primary Dodger as his brother was for the last 3 seasons for the Irish? And once again, he proved yes. He's being guarded by Ty Banks of Georgetown, who's just a sophomore, but was one of the best covermen in the country, even as a freshman last year. Banks did force 4 turnovers and had a great game in this one, but Kavanaugh managed 3 goals in a dish, with his final goal being very timely, the game clincher at the end. If Banks couldn't erase number 50, I'm not sure who will down the stretch here overall. And the Hoyas have Brown up next with Notre Dame at Maryland. Or actually, Notre Dame is at Maryland is what that says there. So that's it. And this is going to be a little bit clunky as I go through here. I had a late night last night, father-daughter dance. We looked incredible. We had a great time. Maybe I'll show a picture here. And then today I'm kind of rushing here. I got to take my son to a birthday party at Dave & Buster's. So I'm kind of trying to rip through here, but we should be good overall. Just had to throw out that. So in case anyone's like, man, that was a really weird segue here and a very weird way to cover that first Notre Dame or that first game, it's just because my brain's a little rotted from being up late last night. Maryland, number 2, Maryland and Princeton here. The Terps starting to gel now. They're showing depth in their offensive scoring, I think, which is important as we kind of rip down through here. 3 players put up 3 points with Urksa, Whittier, and Danny Kelly, each scoring 2 goals and a dish. As we see, identical stat line there. And then Jack Schultz, 2 goals. Bryce Ford, 1-1. Matthew Keegan, 2 goals. They all had their own variety of 2 points here. Now, face-off losses. I had talked about that being a key to the game, and I had said I believe that face-off losses are going to continue to plague Princeton, and that was the case for the second week in a row. Shea Kiefler wins 10 of 15 for Maryland, and Sean Creeder was good for 6 of 11. Now, complex math would tell us that the Terps won 16 of 26 on the day. Princeton's going to have to figure this out. Because they're going to get into Ivy League play. They still have some really tough non-conference games, and they're going to have a hard time pulling out wins against teams as good as Maryland against the rest of the top 10 if they can't figure out a way to win faceoffs. They were able to eke out the win against Penn State while losing a metric shit ton of faceoffs, but that can't continue, and that's a very difficult thing to fix. It's not something that's going to be an easy fix overall. Princeton also shot the ball terribly, very poorly, worse than normal even. Mackesy is a volume shooter to begin with. He had 3 goals and a dish, but was 3 of 12 shooting. That's not uncommon for him. A volume shooter is going to do that from time to time. But now throw in Nate Kabiri shooting 2 of 14, assuming that stat line is right. Chad Colombo 0 for 5. Jack Vanna 0 for 4. And now you have a Princeton team that scored on only 9 of 46 shots. Now that's Syracuse level bad in terms of shooting percentage. 19% if I did my math correctly. So they're going to have to improve upon that as well. You can't face off poorly and then shoot the ball like shit. Now, credit to them. Defensively, they gave up 13 goals, but they're still, despite the fact they lost almost all of the possession battles, and they're still only lose the game 13-9. So if there is a way for them to shore anything up at the dot, that's going to bode well for them long term. But fixing your face-off woes when you don't have the guy, that is very tough. And right now, Andrew McMeekin not having a great day. Kobe Ginder also not doing a great job overall. I think Princeton will clear up their shooting issues, though, so that's going to help them. So despite losing faceoffs, as long as they shoot the ball a little bit better, even just a little bit better than this game, this score is, closer, and that could change the face of it. Logan McNaney, as always, very good in cage. 13 saves, 13 goals against per here. I actually have 12 saves to 9 goals against. I don't know why they have 13 goals against. Oh, duh. What a moron. See, I told you I'm an idiot. I'm looking at the wrong goalie's statistics. 12 saves, 9 goals against for McNaney. But hey, I like this Ryan Croddick guy for Princeton. His first 2 games, he's actually been pretty tough. Young guy. Is he a freshman? I keep thinking people are freshmen. He's not a freshman. First-year starter here for Princeton, but he's a junior. Why do I keep assuming Ivy League goalies that are starting for the first time are freshmen? Junior goalkeeper, but he's been pretty good for Princeton so far in cage to kind of help anchor the back of that defense overall. And, so McNaney, always good. He did a great job. Now, in all here, Maryland defensively did a good job of winning 1v1 matchups. They kept the middle of the field covered again, something they did well against Syracuse over the course of that second half. So credit to the Maryland defense for doing a good job bottling Princeton up, making life difficult for their shooters, not giving them shots in close, and forcing them to shoot outside. And obviously, it showed in their save percentage overall. So good job out of the Maryland defense. And right now, legitimately, Maryland is the number 2 team in the country. I have been over-ranking them compared to everybody else in terms of the media poll. I've been giving them that 4 to 5. I think I gave them the 3 to open the season. So they've been in the 3 or 4 range, I believe, in my poll submission every week. But, I mean, obviously they are now the true number 2, and it's going to be an incredible game next weekend because Maryland's going to host Notre Dame Saturday, and then Princeton's going to take on Duke. So we have both of these teams are just going to turn around and play crazy games here again next weekend. Johns Hopkins and North Carolina. Now, when you zoom out of this game, it was pretty much decided by the first 57 seconds of the contest. Carolina jumped out to a 3-zip lead before a minute had even expired off the game clock. With all of that said, after that, it was a dogfight. Hopkins' defense eventually settled down. Luke Stout started seeing the ball better. Hopkins was able to claw back and then make an insane game of this by the end. Petro, what a story. The kid grows up running around on Homewood Field as a kid, comes back with his father, who's now the defensive assistant for Carolina. Finishes with 6 goals off 15 shots. Also, I want to throw in here, I didn't show any highlights of Duffy in the recap, but Owen Duffy played incredible, especially over the course of the first half. He had 4 first half goals, all of them huge. It showed that he can hang against the best of them, both as a Dodger. I mean, this Hopkins defense is great. They were double teaming him. He was rolling away from doubles. He scored 3 unassisted goals on the day. He beat those double teams to free himself and others up. He finished with 4 goals and a helper. So a great game out of Owen Duffy. And some of those goals were sick. I mean, he had dudes draped on him on one. He got underneath and scored. I think it may have been the first goal of the game. So he looked great. And then Hopkins pretty much took him out of the game over the course of the second half, but did so, I feel, to a degree, to a detriment, allowing Petro to then wreak havoc on Stout after that. Logan Callahan, I think he deserves a bunch of credit here. His play at the faceoff dot for Hopkins was great. Brady Wambach for North Carolina is a very capable faceoff man, and Logan Callahan goes 15 of 27 on the day, 7 GBs. Without that effort, this game, the margin of this game ends up getting spread out, and I wasn't sure how that would go. I figured that this was probably about the stat line, but I honestly thought Brady Wambach was going to probably edge Callahan by just a little bit, so that's absolutely incredible for him. Another thing, just to throw out there, the quality of this game throughout was pretty incredible. Each team only turned the ball over 12 times, which is a low number at this point of the season when it's kind of cold outside. And I guess at this point, both of these teams were now playing. Hopkins is playing their 5th game, Carolina their 3rd. But still, it was a clean game overall. Not a lot of penalties. Just a really almost like an end of season level game out of these two teams. It was pretty fun to watch. Melendez, he finally just goes absolutely bonkers. 5 goals, 2 helpers for Hopkins. Collison went for 2 goals and a dish. Now, I've been harping all season so far saying for Hopkins to win these games, these two need to show up at the same time. Collison didn't have his best game, but it wasn't a terrible game by any stretch. 2 goals and a dish. So in this one, kind of the story becomes, all right, these two guys are now putting their points up. Who else is going to put points up? Hunter Chauvette has been held scoreless now in their last 2 outings, and he was their most consistent scorer over the first 3 games, I think going for 3 goals, and maybe 2 goals over those first 2. Last game, he wasn't held scoreless or anything like that, nor in this one. I think he had 2 assists. I keep going to the wrong side. Yeah, he still had 2 assists, but he hasn't scored goals, and they need that lefty sniper on the wing scoring goals for him here. So now the story becomes Collison and Melendez are in fact showing up. Who's going to show up behind them to help Hopkins, kind of get over this hump now? But listen, Hopkins 4-1. I don't see their ranking dropping all that much. They're probably going to drop a little bit here, maybe 2 spots as Carolina picks up probably 2 spots or so. I'm not going to bump in my own poll. I'm not going to bump Carolina ahead of Hopkins. I don't think. Maybe I will, depending on how it goes. I just don't see, frog jumping North Carolina up. But then again, I haven't looked at it yet, so I'm going to shut the hell up about what I'm going to do there. Carolina has Penn up next, and Hopkins is going to host Virginia. And, that's it for that one. Cornell and Denver. The dumbest thing a commentator, I think, has said so far this year came on Cornell's 10th goal of the game. The announcer spoke of Cornell getting their 10th goal of the game against a staunch Denver defense, and I'm pretty sure you aren't allowed to use that term in a situation like this where Denver's giving up their 10th goal of the half with 51 seconds left. Denver's defense overall was probably the opposite of staunch. I looked it up. The opposite of staunch per Google is unreliable, and that's what Denver's defense was on Saturday against Cornell. Jack Cascadin, he was one of the keys here. I said he was probably going to run roughshod all over Denver. I honestly didn't see the spread getting this bad. I figured if it did, it was going to be because Cascadin dominated the dot. He technically won less than 50%, but he had 5 GBs. He had a goal and he forced 3 turnovers. So that kind of turns this more into a 12 of 19 situation. You could even call it a 13 of 19 situation if you want to count that goal in the mix too. But hey, Michael Krause did a good job for Denver battling at the dot because he struggled so far, but it didn't matter. Denver still just got the shit kicked out of him overall. Kirst finished the day with a monster 6 goals and 2 helpers. Ryan Goldstein was 1-5. My boy William Firth, 2-1 overall. And then Will Nustin-Cage, 13 saves, 5 goals against. He had an incredible day here. Denver rolled out 2 goalies again, as they have been for like the last 3 seasons. Kleben struggled a little bit, but it was, the defense didn't help him out and did him no favors overall. So credit to Cornell's offense for ripping Denver a new asshole on defense. And we're going to move on here. I don't even have who they play next. Who cares at this point? I'm sure it's going to, you know what? I'm going to do you guys right, and I'm going to tell you who these guys play next. Cornell has Hobart up next. That should be an easy win for them. And Denver has Marist. That should be a victory, albeit probably not easy for them. All right, this is the one I don't want to talk about. So let's start by getting a couple of things out of the way here. Freshman goaltender Graham Stevens played incredibly for Harvard. Dude came in, and I mean, his stat line doesn't show it. 48% between the pipes, but he got a rough start and then settled in and played really well down the stretch overall. The Syracuse goaltending was abysmal. Jimmy McCool couldn't buy a save. Michael Ippoliti came in and played decent as he's just getting thrown to the wolves in a really tough situation overall. But Graham Stevens was one of the reasons Harvard won this game overall. He played great. All right, what do we got to get out of the way also? Okay, also Harvard defense took one out of Maryland's playbook and pretty much took everything away from the Orange on the inside over the course of that second half. They played incredible lacrosse as well. And then lastly, it didn't really show up in the stat book in terms of statistics here because Teddy Malone's 4-1 and Miles Botkiss was 2-2. But Sam King looked, especially down the stretch, like he was the best player in this game. And number one, just the amount of, Riley Figueres played a really good game against him for almost the entire game. I would say it was that fourth quarter where King started getting a little bit more aggressive, where he kind of started, imposing his will a little bit more, drawing some more slides. He scored the eventual game winner, but that was late in the game. He was far more aggressive over the course of that fourth quarter, forcing Syracuse into a bunch of slides that didn't necessarily get him points, but did help free some others up to do the dirty work for him. I was impressed. Once again, I got to say, Figueres did a great job against him. I was worried about the matchup. I thought it was going to be King who ended up putting up 5 points or so in this one. He didn't. They managed to keep him off the scoreboard, but I think they did that, and it cost them maybe a little bit off ball and on the backside. Now, on to my rant. John Mullen won 28 of 31 fucking faceoffs for Syracuse in this game. 28 of 31. If you had told me Mullen was going to win 28 of 31, that he was going to pick up 18 GBs, I would have told you Syracuse won this game by 10 goals. I think any sane person would have assumed with that stat line, Syracuse would have won this game by 28 goals. That whole HHH, and like no other, like all the shit. I actually saw whoever is in charge of the Syracuse social media account post the final score 15-14 with the hashtag HHH like no other. I don't know what they're thinking. That's just really bad optics. Really, you're sitting here wondering about the sanity of the person who put that post up. I hope they cringed as they wrote it, because this Syracuse offense did not play with any of the 3 H's. My worry overall is that the last two, listen, they're 3-2, but the way they've played in these last 2 games, I'm normally a player, the players play the game kind of guy, and it's usually the players that lose a game, and I don't typically chirp coaches, but it is plain as shit for anyone to see that the Syracuse coaching staff has been completely outcoached over their last 2 games. I'd posit so far this season they've been outcoached in 3 of their 5 games here. I think that Vermont second half was similar. Cuse came out and started beating up on Vermont in the first half of that game, and then the second half had a hard time putting anything together. The Towson game was great and everything like that, but that Vermont game was the one I started worrying about, because Vermont outscored Syracuse 4-3 over the course of the second half. No adjustments. Vermont came out and made adjustments. Syracuse is thinking at the half, we don't need to make adjustments, let's just keep doing what we're doing. Okay, fair enough. Probably not on the coaches. That's probably a player execution issue here. But We move on to Towson. Cuse rolls Towson. But now who gives a shit? Towson's 0-4. So after they beat Towson when Towson was still ranked in 0-2, I'm thinking, okay, hey, that's a pretty good win here. Maybe this team really has arrived. But now Towson's 0-4. So who gives a shit about that win? Now against Maryland, Cuse is up 5-4 at the half. Things are looking great. Terps come out, make some incredible defensive adjustments, and then they outscore the Orange 7-2 over the second half. Now against Harvard, 10-8 Syracuse at halftime, and I had a feeling that they were going to still win by 5 to 7 goals. Mullen was dominating the dot. There was no reason to think that he wouldn't. Once again, though, the other team comes out and makes halftime adjustments. Syracuse, I don't know if they did or didn't look like they did, because Mullen did continue to dominate en route to a 28 of 31 day at the dot, but Harvard bottled up the Orange offense while outscoring them 7-4 over the final stanza. Again, I don't want to trip coaches. It's players that play the game. But if you watch the game, it doesn't look like Syracuse is playing without heart. At times, it does look like they're playing without their heads, especially late. You could tell they were frustrated. They did not show poise down the stretch. They threw some bad passes into the middle on that last possession. Leo's shot was terrible. It's like, dude, you can't afford to take a shot late in the game and let somebody soak it up. So I'm not putting this on the players. For once, I'm sitting here saying the Syracuse coaching staff is a hot mess at this point. Offensively, they can't figure out how to make adjustments when teams adjust to them. Defensively, everyone wants to hype up our defensive coordinator here, which generally he's been very good, and I think he's done a good job with the personnel we have here. I'm trying not to name names on purpose just because I don't want to be a total dickhead. But perplexing as shit in this game, multiple points where I mentioned it in the recap, multiple points where Syracuse is playing very good man defense down into, let's say, the last 20 seconds of the shot clock. The ball goes out on the end line because as teams get a little later in the shot clock, they start taking shots. Ball goes out on the end line. I think this happened on 3 occasions, at least 2 occasions, where Syracuse switches into a zone defense off an end line restart, gives up a quick goal. The one against Spallina where Jake Spallina just broke down poorly, and then it was Figueres didn't come up. They just the guy split them with that swim move and scored. I mean, this happened 2 or 3 times, and I don't understand. Your man-to-man defense is working. Why the fuck are you switching into zone defense off an end line restart? You do that typically when you're struggling defensively. You do that typically where you need to get a stop or where you need to flummox a team that's just ripping shots on you like crazy. That wasn't what they did. And usually when you go into a zone defense, the goal is let's force outside shots on a goalie that's maybe struggling to make saves or whatnot, but they're giving up inside shots every time they'd switch to the zone. So that zone ain't working. I tweeted at one point and said, hey, I don't know, but that zone ain't it. Don't run it. And so I question the decision-making in key moments out of the coaching staff for Syracuse right now. If they're saying, you know what, he's right, credit to them then, and then fuck me, I'm the idiot here. You can tell I'm frustrated because I'm dropping F-bombs all left and right here. But just as a guy who's been a Syracuse fan since I was a little kid, 4th grade, 5th grade or something like that, I have loved these guys. It is really frustrating to watch a team that I think has the talent, and I think they do have heart. But I think what they're lacking is their coaches aren't making the proper adjustments down the stretch, and we're lacking leadership. We don't have the alpha. We don't have a guy like a Sam King who can say, hey, you know what? I'm having a bad game. Figueres has bottled me up the whole game, but in the 4th quarter, I'm going to still do the things that I need to do to draw slides, to put my team on the back. I'm going to score the game-winning goal at the end. You know, that's the shit we're lacking right now. We have personnel. They're just not winning one-on-one matchups at all. And I told somebody in a I forget if it was a text or a tweet or some crap like that, where this Syracuse offense is like a gadget quarterback in the NFL. When it's working early on, it looks great and it is insanely fun to watch. But once teams start to figure out the game and they start to figure out the gadget plays and all of that, then you see these quarterbacks take huge steps backwards in terms of production. And it looks like that's what's happening with the Syracuse offense, except it's happening in real time. You know, they're coming out, getting a hot start, but once the teams settle in and get used to kind of keeping it bottled up and taking away the middle, they have no answer because guys can't win one-on-one matchups and score goals. So that's it. I got to stop talking about this here. I'm going to be blackballed by Syracuse and all that crap here. They'll probably take me off the media list, but at this point, I don't give a shit. I've never used my press pass at the Dome here up to this point. Duke, Michigan. Michigan played a great game overall. They held a 7-5 lead with 4:02 to play. Because I was crunched for time today, I didn't go through all of that. But McAdory didn't end up just scoring the game winner. He scored the last 2 goals of regulation to force overtime and route to scoring that game winner. He only had an assist going into that last 3 minutes of the game. Ends up putting up a natural hat trick, including the game-winning goal in overtime. Patrick Jamison played well for Syracuse for Duke and Cage here. 14 saves against 7 goals against. And then at the face-off dot here, Ben McCarthy, 7-12. Luke, I can never pronounce his name, Engelke or whatever. I think he's taken a bunch of draws too. He did okay, but yeah, Duke beats Michigan, and they're now 4-0. Duke ends up with who? Princeton next here. They're hosting Princeton at home, and then Michigan is going to take on Canisius. Should be an easy win for Michigan, get them above 500. They actually have Canisius and Cleveland State before they go play Harvard at Harvard. So they should be 4-2 heading into that Harvard game, and then they got a brutal stretch here. Look at this stretch for Michigan. 2 easy ones, and then Harvard, Notre Dame, Maryland, Hopkins, and Penn State before they get Rutgers and Ohio State. And hey, up until Ohio State just kicked the shit out of Virginia, I would have said that those last 2 games should be wins maybe for Michigan. But, now nothing's guaranteed here in the Big Ten. The Big Ten's looking bonkers. Penn State kind of handled Navy here. They were up 8-6 at the half and then rolled from there with some separation in the second half. I thought Matt Traynor was going to have a bigger day, 2-2 off 10 shots. So Navy did a good job bottling him up, but Penn State ends up getting depth in scoring. Jack Frasian, middle of the road day, 6 saves, 7 goals against here. It was this Dan Daly kid from Navy, junior goaltender, 19 saves, 13 goals against. So without his effort, it's an absolute shit show overall here. And then faceoffs, kind of even here throughout for this one. But yeah, Penn State 3-1 now. Penn State, who do they have up next? They're at Yale next. Those are always bangers. Penn State versus Yale, and Navy's going to be taking on Boston U, which should be a good game because Boston U is now sitting at 4-0. This is one I didn't see. I didn't see Boston U sitting at 4-0 this year. Their schedule, maybe I could have called that here, but they get that win over Brown, so they're 4-0 heading into that Navy game. That should be a good one. What the hell happened in this one? Admittedly, I watched this off on the side a little bit as I was watching, I think, the Hopkins game, but I ended up flipping this off for something else. But yeah, Virginia, close game by halftime here, 3-1, but Ohio State comes out and just thrashes them in the second half, outscoring them 11-4 en route to the big win. I mean, 14-5 win. Nobody saw that coming. And I bet you, I don't know. I don't even know what I was going to say here. Vegas-wise, nope. I'm sure very few people took Ohio State. Very many didn't take the Ohio State money line unless they're just degenerate gamblers here. But if for anyone who took Ohio State to cover or had, Ohio State for some weird reason covering in a parlay or something like that, good job. Shane O'Leary, 3-1. Griffin Turner, 2-2. Story here is just the depth in scoring for Ohio State. They got production from a bunch of guys, and you look at the shit show on the Virginia side over here. Ryan Colsley's been really the only bright spot offensively, at least consistently for Virginia. Truett Sunderland, 0-3. Griffin Schutz, 1-0. Ryan Colsley, 4-1. That's terrible. Terrible. Bad juju. You can't have it if you're Virginia. You've got all of these 5-star recruits sitting on your roster, and you only have 3 dudes show up and put points up. That's bonkers. Credit Caleb Fyock, though, in Cage. 12 saves, 5 goals against, and Virginia could barely buy a save in this one overall. And then faceoff dot, similar to the Syracuse game, Anthony Gobriel and Andrew Greenspan dominated the faceoffs in the possession battle at the middle of the field, but it didn't matter. Offensively, they couldn't do shit, or should we say they couldn't do dick, whatever it is, and they end up getting waxed, and Ohio State rolls in this one. Who do we have next in these 2 games? Ohio State is going to take on Bryant next. That should be a victory. And Virginia is at Johns Hopkins. We already said that, but that should be a good one here. Lehigh and Richmond. Richmond pulls out a rough one here against Lehigh, 9-8. Lucas Littlejohn, one of the dopest names in lacrosse, goes for a hat trick. Lucas Alson goes for a hat trick. And Zach Veek, 62% between the pipes. That's going to get it done for you here in these close games. And once again, another scenario where the team that dominated the faceoff dot, Lehigh, Sean Dow, 15-20, wins 75% of the draws with 11 GBs. That's a day. they still lose the game 9-8 to Richmond. So Richmond now coming off that win over Virginia. They're now 3-1 after dropping that tough one to Maryland. They've got Cornell up next. So that should be a battle. Who's Lehigh got? Oh, I clicked the wrong link here. Lehigh is at Villanova. Should be another good game. Delaware and Penn. Not much to say about this one other than Penn beat Delaware 10-2. I wanted to go in to tell you Emmett Carroll was the big reason. Look at that save percentage. 93%, 14 saves. Just a single goal against here against Delaware. Delaware has been a pretty good team, 2-1. They got the win over Utah early in the season on the road. They beat St. John's, but can't get it done against Penn. And Chris Patterson, 2-1. Davis Provost, 2-1. And Penn now improves to 2-1. Penn has North Carolina. We already talked about that. Carolina's up next for them. And Delaware is going to have High Point. Yeah, this one I wanted to talk about too because this one scares me for Syracuse here because Syracuse is going to have to play Colgate, I believe. I mean, they always play Colgate. So do they play them this year? Yeah, the 22nd. So here's a game now that I'm afraid of because I said this early. Harvard scared me a little bit because of Sam King and, just Harvard. I knew they were capable of coming in and playing tough, but I figured Cuse would be able to handle them because they got waxed to a small degree by Colgate during the week. Colgate now comes in and plays number 19 Villanova and beats the piss out of them. Rory Connor 2-2, Liam Connor 3-1. So they get the job done. What did Lacombe do in Cage? 13 saves, 4 goals against here. We've seen some incredible goalie play so far this weekend. And once again, the team that lost the face-off battle wins the game. Is this a trend that's developing here overall? And that's it, guys. Like I said, I got an event that I have to get to here with my son, so that's today's show. Probably, I would say for sure, the worst show I have done all season. I don't mind admitting that, but hey, I got it out. I grinded through. I usually write the show on Saturday, and I already have highlights cut up, and I'm ready to roll, and I've read through my notes today. I just had to fly by the seat of my pants here. I wrote everything this morning and just ripped through it. So be sure to come back Wednesday. We'll do the preview show. We'll talk about some other things. As always, be sure to go to LaxFactor.com, buy some swag, support the channel that way. Also, hit us up on all social media platforms. If you only follow us in one place, go follow me everywhere. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you're at, because we put shorts up now throughout the week. So it's not just these 2 shows, but I'm trying to put content out for people during the week as well. And that's it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And Hoost is out.
The LaxFactor Podcast.